this a great game or what? With the Hall of Famer Tim Kurkjian. I'm his son, Jeff Kurkjian, and thank you for joining us for another episode. And Dad, we are recording this on Memorial Day. Obviously, a very important day to remember those who sacrificed their lives for this country. And Dad, it brings me back to what a great episode we had last year surrounding Memorial Day. We had Lindsay Berra on, who's the granddaughter of Yogi Berra, who served this great country. And she also is heavily involved in what the Yogi Berra Museum and Learning Center is doing to help out kids. And that was such a great interview. So if you're new to the podcast and you want to jump back to season 1, highly recommend it, because everything we talked about is still relevant to today.
And remember, Lindsay made us laugh, and she also made us cry a year ago. And when we asked about her grandfather talking about serving, she said he didn't talk very much about it. It was because it was so powerful and it was so important that, like so many other veterans who served, they choose not to speak about this. But that's why it's important for us to speak about it, just so those are remembered, those who served, and especially those who died in the line of service.
And I know a lot of people are visiting Arlington Cemetery in Washington, D.C., among many other amazing veterans cemeteries. And Dad, both of your parents are buried at Arlington Cemetery. Now, your dad, my grandfather, Pop, didn't die in the line of duty, but he did serve this country. And now they're laid to rest there, which I think is so incredible. And having visited there now as an adult a few times, it's a powerful place.
It really is. And my dad never spoke about and again, he was never really in combat, but he was overseas when D-Day happened. So you can actually say he was there. And my father loved to joke around about a lot of things, but he didn't talk much about that because we all knew how important that was in the history of our country.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's nothing your dad, my grandfather, wouldn't have fun with. He was the guy who, when the power went out at his own 80th birthday party, because we had overloaded all of the power at the house, he started singing himself so that the party wouldn't stop when the music cut out, because that's just the guy he was.
Yeah, I saw him sing by himself an awful lot of times, Jeff. He saved more parties. You know how there's stories about people who could empty a room faster than anyone. My father could fill a room faster than anyone, whether it was with a joke or a song or something. We miss him terribly 23 years later.
No doubt about it. So to those who serve, those families who continue to serve, and those who lost their lives in the line of service, thank you. Thank you so much. We're always thinking about you. Dad, we've got a guest that's going to be joining us today, a kind of a similar to Frank from the Elias when he joined us, because this is a secret guest, and I'm going to keep it a secret for the very end of the episode. But let me just say, if you know our show, if you know Tim and Jeff Kurkjian, if you know where my dad went to high school, and just for the record, we don't have Walter Johnson joining the show. Okay? He died 80 years ago.
Jeff,
so
he died on my birthday, December 10th, 1946. I was born on December 10th, 1956. So now we've given away that this has to do something with Walter Johnson.
Yeah, but it will not be him, okay? He couldn't make it, and even if he was around, he would be 135 years old, and I think at this point he probably couldn't figure out the technology. But anyway, nonetheless, we have a special guest surrounding all of that, Dad, so I'm really excited that we got to set that up, so stay tuned for that. Now, Dad, let's jump into the takeaways with something very deeply personal for you. So before we fully jump into what the teams are doing across Major League Baseball, I think a big takeaway has to do with some sad news.
Right. My dear friend, Jim Henneman, one of the best baseball writers of all time, passed away this week. Henny, as we call him, is one of the great writers I've ever met. And Jeff, I've told people this before. No writer that I have ever met understood the playing of the game better than Jim Henneman. What I mean by that, he could sit in the press box and he could tell you that's an elite slider. That guy got a great jump on that ball. That guy made a great play to his right. You know how hard that play is to make? A lot of writers can't see that stuff. Nobody saw it better than Jim Henneman. And Henny knew that stuff in part because he was a really good player in his day, a little crafty little left-hander who pitched on a lot of different levels. So, Jeff, I love this. We played a couple of media games. One at Memorial Stadium in Baltimore and the other at Camden Yards in Baltimore. And, of course, Henny played in both of them. And someone actually he's pitching in his mid-50s. He might even have been 60 at the time. And he was getting people out because he was still really good. So somebody got on base, and Jim Henneman picked him off with, I think, the greatest pickoff move I've ever seen. Better than the left-handers on the Baltimore Orioles. The guy got on base. Granted, it was a righter, and he picked him off. I will never forget that. That was Jim Henneman. And, of course, Henny came to a bunch of your school plays in high school. Agreed?
Yeah, that was one of the coolest things, and you guys had such a great relationship. Yeah, he came to Guys and Dolls and to the Wedding Singer, and it was really neat to always see him there supporting something that I was doing, and I really appreciated it. I'm glad he wasn't a theater critic, though, because he's a great writer. He might have tore some performances apart. Just kidding. He would never do that. But nonetheless, it's funny, Dad, when I moved to the Philadelphia area, one of the first people I actually had a chance to meet was his nephew. His nephew, Tom, runs Federal Donuts. He owns Federal Donuts here in the area. And the very first thing he said to me was, "Hey, my uncle is Jim Henneman." And I said, "Henny?" Who I've known my whole life. I don't know a day in my life that I didn't know Henny. And I just thought it was really cool. New job, new area. This was about 3 years ago when we moved here. And one of my first fast friends was somebody who not only knows Henny, is related to him. It's his uncle.
Right. And of course, Jeff, they named the press box at Oriole Park after Jim Henneman. I was there that day when they named the press box. It was an emotional, powerful moment. Henny was really, really touched by that. And Jeff, 2 days before he died, I went to see him in the hospital. And I sat with him for an hour. And even though he was clearly dying, he held my hand for an hour. And the grip he still had in his hand was just amazing to me. And he could barely speak. But like the last thing that he said to any of us in the room was, "I just wish I could go back there one more time." And what he meant, Jeff, was the ballpark, because Jim Henneman's life took place in a ballpark as a player, as a spectator, but mostly a member of the media. So rest in peace, my dear friend, Jim Henneman.
Dad, let's jump in. Major League Baseball takeaways. We do episodes 3 days a week, so these Tuesday episodes are just chock full of great stuff going on in Major League Baseball. What do you have?
Yeah, a bunch of things happened this week. The Red Sox called up Marcelo Meyer, who's one of their three great prospects. Of course, Christian Campbell has made the club out of spring training. Meyer came up when Alex Bregman went down with an injury, and Meyer played third base first couple games. He's mostly a shortstop, but he can also play third. It's only a matter of time before Roman Anthony comes up, and then they'll have their three big name minor league players in the big leagues, and that's a really bright future for the Red Sox. I remember talking to Marcelo in spring training. By the way, the only player in Major League history, Jeff, with the first name Marcelo. How about that? What a distinction that is. I asked him if he played other sports because he's a big guy, 6'3", 190 pounds, left-handed hitter, has power, really smooth at shortstop. And I was surprised to hear he played water polo. He was a goalie in water polo.
What?
Jeff, you being the worst swimmer of all time, you would be the worst water polo player ever, right? I would be second worst, I think.
Well, people don't realize, I'm sure a lot of people realize, but they're treading water the entire time. They're not standing up there. They have to tread. And the goalies are just like, treading. How long, Dad, right now, age 68, could you tread water before you would need to be rescued? Genuinely. No floating on your back. This is not floating on your back. This is treading water, moving your hands in and out, kicking your legs underneath. How long do you think you could do that
Well,
for?
Jeff, is it a matter of life or death? Because if I'm going to drown, I could tread water for a good minute and a half if I was going to drown. No, I'm not good at treading water. I'm not a terrible swimmer, but that's in short distances, not long distances. All right, it's enough of swimming, Jeff, please. All right, Tarek Skubal of the Tigers. You have a note on this. Is that correct? Tarek Skubal of the Tigers threw a shutout. He threw 94 pitches and struck out 13. Jeff, you know how hard it is to strike out 13 batters on 94 pitches? You know what that is? That's complete domination. You're not just striking people out, you're striking them out on 3 pitches. So what is your note on that? Because you sent it to me.
He sent the major league record for most strikeouts with 13 by a pitcher with 99 pitches or fewer in that game. Oh. Now, the reason why I sent this to you, Dad, was not actually because of the takeaway. It was because of how it was written. This is how it was written. Sent to my buddy by John Gay, who lives in Detroit and has become, he grew up a Red Sox fan, grew up in the New England area, but now he loves rooting for the Tigers too, because hometown team now. So by a pitcher in a complete game shutout, that's what it says.
Well, Jeff, a lot of people say complete game shutout. I think it's redundant. He pitched a shutout. That's it. But I talked to Frank at the Elias and double-checked this note. So the last pitcher to strike out 13 or more in any start with under 100 pitches was Clayton Kershaw, who did that in 2017, but he won that game 5-2. But Jeff, you got to remember, the Elias is the official scorekeeper, so we have to go, at least on this show, by what they say. And Frank told me we can only go back 20 to 25 years on pitch counts, and there were a lot of shutouts with 13 or more strikeouts prior to 1940. We're not going to be able to go back and check those. None of this is important. What's important is Tarek Skubal is the best pitcher in baseball, and he threw another gem the other day. And again, Jeff, his first complete game of his career, which is so good. Remember, Blake Snell won 2 Cy Youngs before he completed a game. Tarek Skubal won 1 Cy Young and got his first complete game.
I want to apologize for looking at my phone during that Tarek Skubal note. I had to check in to a Southwest flight, and if you're not on there right when your flight is 24 hours before, you're going to end up in the C group.
You're in C group, Jeff.
You're dead.
Middle seat, so you're done.
Dad, I landed B28 and B7.
Oh, that's okay. If you're in the Bs, you can get a window or an aisle seat.
Well, here's the other thing. Here's the hack. So I'm flying to Las Vegas for my radio job because our show, the Andy Summer Show with Jeff Kurkjian, Donnie, and Shannon, is played in Philadelphia, is where we're based out of. We're played in Boston, played in Las Vegas on my old radio station I used to do country radio for. Well, we're flying out there, Dad, and I'm bringing McKinley with me on a work trip.
Oh, so you have your 1-year-old daughter with you, and you're in the Bs.
And I'm in the Bs, but because of her, I will now be able to board just after the A group in the family boarding.
Right.
Not the only reason why I brought her, actually.
I've done this. I travel with you and your sister alone many times. You were 1, Kelly was 3, did it many times alone. First thing you ask is how crowded is the flight? If it's a packed flight, you're done. But if they say it's opening, it's kind of open here and there, then you go find a place where no one else will want to sit. Then you can have privacy.
Yeah, so thankfully, we're going to place her in the middle seat. I have a coworker who's offered to be on the window or aisle opposite me, and no one's going to want to sit next to a baby. I mean, it's the greatest deterrence of all time. Right. And so I'm flying for the first time with McKinley. She'll be 2 in August. And so that's happening the day this releases. This is happening on Tuesday, Dad. So I'm a little nervous. However, I want to take this moment to tell you the greatest airplane story of my life, okay? I was on a Southwest Airlines flight. For those who don't know, it's pick your own seat based upon your boarding number, right? I'm in the window. A woman is in the aisle seat. She's an Indian woman, right? And right as we board, she pops open a Tupperware container with Indian food. And Dad, listen, I grew up with a lot of Indian friends. I've been over to their houses. I enjoy their parents' cooking, but Indian food has a very specific strong smell. And people walk by. I'm not kidding, Dad. There was one empty seat on this flight, and it ended up between me and this woman, right? Because as soon as they closed the boarding door and they said, we have loaded, everybody's in their seats, let's get going. She turns. She hasn't said a word to me. She turns and looks at me and says, works every time. Closes it and puts it back in her bag.
She scared someone off with the smell of Indian food.
She was just sitting there eating a little bit here and there, and she looks at me and goes, works every time. Dad, she must have been 65, 70 years old, and like she knew, and she did it on purpose, and now of all of the seats on the plane, only one empty one, and it was the one next to us.
Jeff,
we didn't say a word to each other. After I smiled, I laughed, and I said, that's great. And then I fell asleep the whole flight.
Jeff, that is genius. And by the way, the reason we had 2 children is so I didn't have to sit next to anybody on the subway. Did you know that? That's the only reason you were born, right, Jeff. So I would have somebody to my left and my right since you were the second born. All right, enough of this.
I appreciate that. All right, that was a really big aside.
Right.
All from me checking into my flight. Continue with the takeaways, please.
All right, so the Padres went 0 for 39 with runners in scoring position recently. Padres are a good team, hit a bad stretch. I was surprised to hear the Cubs went 0 for 43 in 2022. Jeff, 0 for 39, 0 for 43 runners in scoring position. That's pretty amazing to me. This is amazing, too. Ronald Acuna Jr. made his first appearance of the season. You know, he's coming back from a terrible knee injury. And the first pitch he saw, he hit for a home run. First pitch he saw on the way back. The last Brave to hit a home run on the first pitch that he saw in a season was famous Brave from the podcast last year, Jeff.
Was it Jeff Francoeur?
Absolutely. And I think he did it with a high ankle sprain, which makes it even more amazing. Only really close followers of the show would understand that. And last thing, Jeff, Taylor Ward is a good major league hitter for the Angels, got an extra base hit in 10 straight games. So that set a club record. Darren Erstad had the previous club record with 9, which means that Taylor Ward, I repeat, good major league hitter, did something that Mike Trout never did, Shohei Ohtani never did, had an extra base hit in 10 straight games. How great is that?
This is what makes our game so different. You know, the sixth man is not setting scoring records in the NBA, right? Only here.
Precisely. And that's why we love baseball so much, the most unpredictable sport ever.
All right, Dad, let's jump into our Kurkjians. What do you have for this week?
Well, the Blue Jays beat the Padres 14-0 this week. So, Jeff, that is the second 14-0 game played in the major leagues this year. And if you remember the first one, I pointed out the last time an NFL game was played 14-0 was 2008. So the last time before that was 1998. So we have had as many 14-0 games this year in the major leagues as we've had in the NFL in the last 37 years. Should that surprise us or not? Or is it so easy to score with the new rules in the NFL now and the kickers are so good? You really got to be bad to be shut out. Is that the point?
Well, I think you really got to be bad to be shut out, but also it's not uncommon, right? You don't see a lot of zeros on an NFL scoreboard, but still, I mean, there's been some pretty crappy teams out there in the last couple of years. We would know.
Understood. Okay, Jansen Junk, he of the unfortunate name for a pitcher, a list we came out with a couple of weeks ago, of the Marlins had a 5-inning save, which is unusual, Jeff. Austin Pruitt did that in 2018, and the only other one in this century was Joaquin Benoit in 2002. So when you see a 5-inning save, it's only happened 3 times in this century. I love stuff like that. And this is what I check for every day, Jeff, in the box scores, which I devour with 2 Diet Mountain Dews, up to 2 Diet Mountain Dews at 5:30 in the morning now, is the reverse triple-double. 2 strikeouts, 2 errors, 2 grounded and double plays in one game. Trent Grisham has had a good year for the Yankees, had 2 strikeouts, 2 GIDPs, but no errors. So the only player still who has ever had a reverse triple-double was Kurt Bavacqua, infielder for the Rangers in 1978. That's the kind of stuff that I check every single day. And when you see 2 GIDPs, which is hard to do, I always make sure I look to see if he had 2 strikeouts and 2 errors. Trent Grisham, 2 strikeouts, no errors. Good for him.
I got to give a shout out to my guy, Jeff Jurgenti. He messaged us from our website, greatgamerwhat.com. He found a matchup that I also found, Dad. Today, recording on Monday, May 26th, Memorial Day, the starting pitching matchup between the New York Mets and the Chicago White Sox.
Yes.
Did you clock this one?
No, I'm not sure. Scoop me, please.
Clay Holmes,
right,
against Adrian Hauser. Holmes, House, close.
Yeah.
Are we getting now? You're disappointed.
Well, if he had
stretch.
If reliever Tony Watson had started the game, believe me, I was all over that. I saw Holmes and I said, too bad there isn't a Holmes and Watson pitching against each other, because then that would be a real mystery of a game. Okay.
Holmes and Hauser. I'm going to give it to him.
All right. Give it to him, of course. He's on the show. He deserves it. He took time to look it up. He's starting to think like
Jeff.
Us. Not a
Great
good
name,
idea.
by the way.
And last thing, speaking of names, Jeff, we had Luke Weaver and Luke Jackson. That's the Yankees against the Rangers. Both were the pitchers of record in a game last week. The first time ever that a Luke and a Luke were both pitchers of record in the same game.
Wow. That is pretty impressive. It brings up my favorite family of all time. You know the Peterson family, Dad?
Yes.
Across the street from us.
Yeah.
I always thought the names of their children, especially mostly their boys, was the funniest thing of all time. Dr. Peterson's name, Mark, right? Their oldest son, Matthew. Their youngest son, Luke. They have another son.
Your best friend.
One of my closest friends in the world. So you've got Mark, you've got Matthew, you've got Luke. What should his name be? John. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John? Nope. His name is Kyle.
Right.
And I remember asking him a couple years ago, like, what was the thought process there? Did we not want all 4 gospel names here? What's going on? And did they just not think you fit the John name, the biblical name? I don't know. All of your brothers, Timothy, Matthew, Andrew, all biblical names.
Right. We were considering naming you a biblical name, Jeff. Mine was Serpent, but it just turned out it was Mom said no, which was probably a good idea. We really need to move on from this too, Jeff. Too many sidetracks. I love the Peterson names.
We've done a whole lot of Bible stuff with Chicago Pope.
Sure.
Chicago Pope.
Right.
He's a baseball fan. So a lot of religion in season 2 of Is This a Great Game or What? So we'll jump right into on this date in baseball history, Dad. May the 27th.
Right. On this date, Terry Collins was born, former major league manager for several teams. Love Terry Collins, one of the most honest guys I've ever met. So when he was the manager of the Astros, the owner of the team was Drayton McLane, who ran a food service industry and was like the owner of the Astros. So Drayton McLane was very much in on inspiring the players. So when the team was in a slump, he asked his manager, Terry Collins, to watch the movie 12 O'Clock High, starring Gregory Peck. And it was an attempt to get him motivated about getting his own players motivated. So Terry Collins watched the movie 12 O'Clock High and reported to the owner afterwards. He said, you know that Gregory Peck cracks in the movie and he can't get in the plane at the end of the movie. You know that. And Drayton McLane said, well, are you going to crack? And Terry Collins, the manager, said, no, I'm not going to crack. And Drayton McLane, again, food service industry, also sent Terry Collins to Chicago from Houston to do a speech to a bunch of convenience store workers, 15,000 of them, to try to motivate them. So Terry Collins is in his Astros uniform and he's talking to all the convenience store, 15,000 of them. And he goes, I'm not sure if I got through to them, but here I am talking to 15,000 people about chili. And he said, I did the best I could as a major league manager. Be careful.
You know, Terry Collins also has a podcast, Dad. The Terry Collins Show. And he's in season 2 of his podcast just like we are.
The former major league manager?
Yeah.
Oh, we got to have him on. He is hilariously funny and a very good manager in his day.
You can see the Terry Collins Show wherever you get your podcast, just like we do, presented by Tunnel to Towers Foundation. I saw something come up on my social media about it. So we'll have to get him on and do a little cross promote. Maybe he'll have you on the podcast, Dad. That would be pretty neat on his.
Love Terry Collins. On this date, Frank Thomas and Jeff Bagwell were both born on the same day in 1968, and they both won the MVP in the major leagues, one in the National League, one in the American League in 1994. Only time that the MVP has won by two guys who shared a birthday. Both Hall of Famers, two of the greatest first basemen of all time.
That's really neat. I didn't realize that.
Right. And speaking of first baseman, Bill Buckner sadly died on this date in 2019. Let's be clear, Jeff. Bill Buckner was a very underrated baseball player, had more hits than Ted Williams. And as I've told you multiple times, Jeff, never struck out 3 times in a major league game. So those people who remember Bill Buckner for one error that he made in the World Series, which was not an easy play, I'm still not sure he gets Mookie Wilson at first base on that. If everything is done cleanly, including the shovel to the pitcher covering first, let's always remember Bill Buckner, really good player, died on this date in 2019.
And funny, connected in a way to Hank Aaron's 715th home run. I learned earlier this year was that he was playing, was it left field?
Left field, yes.
He was playing left field when the ball went over his head to be the 715th home run to make Hank Aaron the home run king. And he was yelling
at...
he was yelling at our guest.
Tom House.
Tom House, thank you, saying, throw me the ball. I'll run it in. And he said, no way am I throwing somebody else this ball right now. Tom House ran it in. He was a guest for us on that date in which the 715th home run was hit, that episode earlier in the season. So check that out if you want. Dad, we have a lot coming up next, including a very special Team Tim, which has to do with our special guest. And then we're going to tell you a little bit about who's joining us tomorrow on the podcast, which I'm really looking forward to. It's all coming up next on Is This a Great Game or What? Welcome back to Is This a Great Game or What? And we told you at the beginning of the show that we had a special guest joining us. And if you know our show, you probably have been beat over the head with it that my dad went to Walter Johnson High School. And this past weekend, Walter Johnson High School won the Maryland State Championship. And we have Coach Steve Sutherland on with us. Look, he has the trophy in the video. Coach, congratulations. This is amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, this hasn't left my side much. The only time it leaves my side is when my son takes it to. I think he slept with it the first night, so it was pretty exciting.
68-year history of Walter Johnson High School, never won a state championship.
In baseball, right? I mean, this is the first time, right?
That's what I'm hearing. I've been there the last 11, 10 if you count 10 or 11 with COVID. I don't know how you address that one, but yeah, no, that's what I'm hearing. I know that there's no banners in the gym, and there was no regions or any of that. So it was, we've been knocking on the door for a while, and we're just happy to finish the deal.
Well, Coach, does it mean a little bit more to you that you won a state championship at a high school named after the greatest pitcher of all time?
It's funny because when I was talking to the assistant principal after the game, who was in on my interview, he reminded me that I said, why shouldn't this school be one of the top ones in the whole state or county? It's named after Walter Johnson. And I don't remember saying that, but I believe him.
That's a good talking point for an interview.
Yeah.
And Coach, you won on a walk-off. I mean, you've played and you've coached and you've done a lot of stuff before, but where does that rank in your baseball career as far as, I mean, that was a stunning finish, correct?
Yeah, so we won. Our first game of the playoffs was we had a bye and we played BCC and had to walk them off in the bottom of the 7th. And then we went on to win the next 3 10-0 against Whitman, who was our region rival. And then Reservoir had 2 Division I arms. So we wound up beating them 10-0. We had a really good ace this year in Nolan Ross. And I don't know if you guys know this, but I live in Urbana. So it made it that much more special, awkward, whatever you want to call it. I had all these people in the neighborhood with signs up saying "Go Urbana," and I'm sitting there. My son plays for Urbana Hawks 10U baseball.
Wow.
Yeah, and we had practice on Thursday, and they were like, Hawks on 3. I'm like, can't you just give me one Wildcats just once?
That is so great. And you coached at Whitman, and you beat them in the playoffs 10-0, right?
I coached.
What was that like?
Yeah, no, I coached 8 years at Whitman, and Coach Joe Cassidy, who I understand you play some basketball with from time to time.
Many times, yes.
Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. It's a great program, and we always have back and forth battles. They knocked us out of the regional championship 2 years ago. They had 2 Power 5 commits and a Division I arm on the mound, and we knew that was always a back and forth battle, and we just we had the right guy on the mound at the right time, and we're healthy.
Yeah, Coach, I don't want to be cheesy when I say this. I mean, obviously we're a father-son baseball podcast, but there is nothing better besides maybe that relationship you have with a parent than that relationship you have with a coach. I think we all remember a coach that truly inspired us, acted like a parent. Going from your playing games to now being a state championship coach, how important do you feel your relationship with those guys on your team is?
I think so. This is actually my first year teaching at Walter Johnson. I've been at Churchill and Whitman and BCC prior to that. And I think being in the building, I teach special education, and I had a few guys intern for me. I'm in charge of the Best Buddies program. I had a bunch of baseball players start joining that as a result of me being in the building. So I think the relationships definitely got a little bit more tight knit with me being in the building. It's funny how you said that the coach relationship is so important. One of the first people I hugged after we won that game was my high school coach, Steve Orsini, who was a special education teacher at Watkins Mill. Drove an hour away just to see me win. He won one with Poolsville about 7 or 8 years ago, I want to say, but he was one of the first people there to support me, and it was just so amazing to see him.
Coach, I don't think there's any mystery here as to finally getting that trophy. You said you've been knocking on the door a couple of years. You end up coaching or you end up teaching at the school, and then you get your kids involved in a great organization like Best Buddies, which I was involved in high school. And I think it's so important, Coach. You seem like one of those that stresses like, hey, what we do on the field and what we do in practice is so important. Yes, but what's even more important is the man you are outside when you're not on the field, when you are in the classroom, when you're at church, when you're at home, wherever it is. And Best Buddies is a great organization that teaches all of those important lessons.
Yeah, we do. A lot of the guys do Best Buddies. And then I don't know how familiar you are with the Miracle League.
Yes, so absolutely.
We've been working with them for the last three or 4 years. We try and do a few in the fall, a few in the spring, usually on Sundays. And it's just, it reminds you that, baseball is a game and it's fun and all that. But like at the end of the day, one thing Joe Cassidy always told me was you should judge your success on how many kids come back because they had a great experience. And after the game, I got off the field and it was just like hugging one alumni after another alumni. And, they just had a great experience through doing all these things outside of just baseball.
Dad, you played baseball at Walter Johnson. More importantly, respectfully, your two brothers were great baseball players at Walter Johnson, ended up going on and being Hall of Fame college baseball players at Catholic University. Not to interview my co-host here, Dad, but you have a storied history at Walter Johnson High School, not just you, but your two brothers in baseball and in sport. This must be really awesome for you too. You were jumping off the walls, I know, when you heard the news.
Yeah, it was great. And Coach, I probably got 24 text messages, emails from buddies of mine who, most of them who played at WJ, some of whom I played with, all saying, did you see the news? WJ won. So this is a really big deal. And if I may personalize it even more, Coach, I'm 68 years old. I was born the year the school opened, and it was striking to me that WJ won its first baseball title, state title, in 68 years. That's how old I am. So this is very personal to me and to a bunch of my friends who all sent me these text messages. Hey, the Spartans, as we once were, won the championship.
It's I saw 68 years. I didn't even know it was 68 years myself. It was a special night, and I got to be honest, when we went down 4-0, I wasn't too confident we'd be here talking about a state title. But this group, I actually think that last year on paper we were better from a talent standpoint, but this group just had more fight than any group I've ever had. It was such a special group and special night, and wouldn't trade it for anything.
I think it's crazy that you almost get knocked out in your first round after the bye week. Then you have a couple 10-0 games. You're like, that's not the way it's supposed to work. You're supposed to have the easy games early and then have the threatening games later, and then you win it in a walk-off, Dad. Did you talk to Frank from the Elias? When was the last time a walk-off win state championship named after a major league player happened? Could be the first ever.
Right. I'm sure it is the first ever. Coach, you're never going to have to buy a meal in Bethesda ever again. And you think that's going to be accurate or not?
I'd hope so. I'm on a teacher salary, so that would help.
Well, my wife was a longtime elementary school teacher. She was the cheer coach at their elementary school, but they didn't have any sports to cheer on. It was just one of those. So, I guess if they ever won something, I think she would get the same thing. But Coach, seriously, you're a teacher. You've dedicated your life to students, to kids with special needs, also to being a coach of baseball, the sport we love the most, and to take the time, noting on Memorial Day, when you should be with family, should be celebrating, should be taking the day off for yourself, you took some time for our little podcast, and we really appreciate it, Coach.
I appreciate being on here. I had a 9 a.m. game the next day for my son, up in Annapolis. So, there is no time off. It's all baseball.
All baseball, all the time. Thank you, Coach, for joining us. Congratulations, and go Wildcats.
Hey, let's repeat next year. We got the talent to do so.
Woo! Sounds great.
Thank you so much to Coach Steve for being a part of the podcast today, Dad. That was extra special and really fun. And in honor of Walter Johnson High School winning the state championship, Dad, you have a very special Team Tim.
Well, we're going to do the all Walter Johnson team. As you know, Jeff, when we do these teams, well, let's be more accurate. When I do these teams, you can't repeat the same name because it's too easy. If they're, you got to have a different name for each position. But since it's Walter Johnson, we're going to basically have the Johnson team of all time. Our catcher is Charles Johnson, one of the great defensive catchers, Marlins, others. Darren Johnson, big time power hitter, 60s and 70s at first base. Davey Johnson, the second baseman, I believe should be a Hall of Fame manager. And he's the guy who's made me laugh so many times, Jeff, and made me think about so many things. First time he met Brooks Robinson, the greatest defensive third baseman of all time, mid-60s, Davey's on the Orioles, and he recognizes that Brooks Robinson writes and eats with his left hand. So Davey, his second baseman, says, well, he's the greatest defensive third baseman of all time. And he told me he wrote with his and ate with his left hand for a year to see if it would make him a better second baseman. He said, didn't work at all, but I had to try it. Third baseman is Howard Johnson, formerly of the Mets and a few others. And I'll never forget, Jeff, 1991, he led the league with 15 sacrifice flies. Speaking of sacrifice flies, I'm fascinated by them. That was the most sacrifice flies in a season by a switch hitter ever. And the Elias pointed that out in the Elias Analyst, and they followed that with, what have we created here? Like, they're actually looking up the most sacrifice flies by a switch hitter in Major League history.
And when we talked last week about what merch items people would want if we started a merch store for Is This a Great Game or What? Number one suggestion, multiple people messaged me and said, well, you need to get a shirt that says, I check with Frank at the Elias. That's
Really?
the whole shirt.
I love it. That's great.
We have to get Frank on the sign off and Elias on the sign off. There might have to be some sort, and people are saying do it for ALS research, right? Raise money. So if we get them signing off on it, that's not a bad idea. I check with Frank at the Elias.
All right, that's great, Jeff. All right, our shortstop is Elliot Johnson, who I always tell this story about him. Very superstitious. Told me that when he was at the plate, he would chew watermelon bubble gum. When he was in the field, he would chew grape bubble gum. It was a superstition. He got traded to the Braves. The first thing he said when he arrived in the clubhouse for the first time to the clubhouse kids, do you have any watermelon bubble gum? And they said, no. He goes, you got to get some. You got to go out and get some now. So they went to the store and got him watermelon bubble gum because, as he told me, and he was dead serious because he's a smart guy, funny guy, and a good player in his day, the hits are in the watermelon bubble gum. And he really believed it. And he said, I got 2 hits that night. And he really believes he got 2 hits in a major league game because he was chewing the right gum.
He didn't make a lot of postseason appearances, but he only has 1 postseason hit, and it was a triple.
Isn't
that interesting?
There you go. All right, our outfield is Alex Johnson, who won a batting title in 1970. Rare, at the time at least, right-handed hitter to win a batting title. Bob Johnson, another outfielder, drove in 100 runs for 7 straight years, mostly 30s, 40s. Lance Johnson, who had a great nickname. He could fly, Jeff, and he used to wear number 1. His nickname was the One Dog. I always loved that because he could really run. He led the league in triples 4 years in a row, and in 1996, he hit 21 triples in 1 season. That's a lot of triples, Jeff, especially in that day and age. And, of course, our 2 pitchers are Walter Johnson is our right-handed pitcher, and our left-handed pitcher, Jeff, I'm going to ask you to come up with the left-handed pitcher.
World-famous photographer Randy Johnson.
Way to go, Jeff. If you had missed that, I would have kicked you off the podcast for the rest of the season and done this all by myself, including the technology and including the editing of all the episodes. How long do you think that would last?
It wouldn't get off the ground, Dad. You don't even know the login to be able to post the podcast, yet alone to figure out how to even do it.
All right, Jeff, we've been abundantly clear about this, that I supply most of the content here, at least the baseball information. You supply everything else. We are dead without me. We are completely dead without you. So thank you for all the work that you do. And sorry I poked fun at you.
No, that's okay. I supply the long-winded conversation about me booking a flight. Well, a big, big shout out to our coach for joining us, Walter Johnson's head coach, state champion, Steve Sutherland. Congratulations to you and that amazing team. Thank you so much for joining us, Dad. Tomorrow on the podcast, we have Bob Ryan, Hall of Fame basketball writer and an amazing writer across all the sports, longtime Boston Globe writer, Dad. He's going to be our guest.
Right. The quintessential sports writer, Bob Ryan, Hall of Fame basketball writer, and his understanding and recall of baseball is just staggering. He made us laugh out loud a whole bunch of times about a whole bunch of sports. Can't wait for you to hear Bob Ryan tomorrow.
And, of course, we're going to ask him a little bit about the ending of Around the Horn. He was a long time panelist on that great show on ESPN. So much coming your way. Join us tomorrow right here on the feed. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share the podcast with a friend. And, as always, thank you for being a part of our family.